Okay, so let's talk about the YFN Lucci case.
Let's.
YSL, Young Thug, Gunna, I don't know any of these guys. But Lucci, I do know. We've done 2 interviews. I know Fly, his manager. I like all these guys. In fact, I believe I did Lucci's last interview before he got arrested. Not to say the interview had anything to do with his arrest. You know, it's completely unrelated.
No, that was coming.
Yeah. And nothing that we talked about in the interview was used in his case on any level and so forth, because people like to connect the dots that aren't there. So he gets arrested, and I interviewed his lawyer, Drew Findling, recently, and he talked about the whole premise of it. So essentially, Lucci was in a car with someone else. I think it was a Maybach.
I'm not sure.
Like a Maybach truck that he was given as a gift. A shootout happened, and his friend gets killed, and he gets charged with the murder, even though...
Felony murder. He's present
even though
in the middle of a crime.
In the middle of a crime. And then it turns into a RICO case because they focus on his alleged blood affiliations and so forth. So now he's in jail at the same time. You know, now there's an overlap between him being in jail and the YSL case and Young Thug being in jail.
Right.
On March 3rd, 2023, he gets stabbed.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that even with the stabbing, right around the time, later in that month, on March 26th of 2023, he refused to cooperate and testify against Young Thug. And I talked to Drew about this, and he was basically like, hey, when we have a client, we ask them what they want to do. If they don't want to cooperate, we don't cooperate. That's it. There's no argument. There's no, let me talk you into it. No. He doesn't cooperate. We're going forward with no cooperation. Which is interesting. Did that surprise you at all?
Not even a little bit.
Okay.
For a bunch of reasons. Never mind the street stuff. He's in a jail where he's not safe with a dozen YSL guys on another floor. You can't tell me that he felt safe enough to testify against Young Thug, period.
Huh.
Like, even if he wanted to, he's like, his life's in his hands.
They wouldn't put him in a protective custody situation, or does it not work like that out here?
How could they not have had him in protective custody already?
Right, when he got stabbed. Yeah.
I mean, come on. Like the jail's that screwed up.
Right.
But aside from that, like, I don't know whether or not he had anything really to gain from it other than, you know, screwing Young Thug. I just don't know how important that is to him.
I'm sure they would have probably offered him a pretty good plea deal, considering it's not like he pulled out a gun and killed his friend in his passenger seat.
Well, he ultimately ended up getting what I would describe as a pretty good plea deal.
Right, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Because originally, in June of 2023, he gets a 20-year plea deal, which he turns down.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So he's now preparing to go to trial. But then, in August of 2023, his artist, CP3, gets stabbed in jail by YSL members.
Yeah.
Was CP3 part of this case that Lucci was part of, or was it something completely different?
I think he was in the RICO case, yes.
Aha.
Yeah.
Okay, what was the situation around that?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I wish I could tell you.
Okay, fair enough.
I didn't actually look at that one.
Okay, fair enough. So, like I said, I talked to Drew Findling about this whole situation. 20-year plea deal, we turn it down. You know, the prosecution and the defense are not on the same page, so now they begin trial. They're going through jury selection. They're preparing their opening statements. They're going through tons and tons of jurors. And then, now Drew wouldn't tell me what exactly happened. He said something happened, and he wouldn't go into details because he's a lawyer and he's lawyering. He said something happened which made the prosecution change its mind about the plea deal. Do you know what that is?
I do.
Tell me, please.
So one of the defendants in the RICO case is a rapper named Bloody J.
Okay.
And Bloody J was an up-and-comer before he got arrested some years ago. He's in jail on, I think, a drug charge. Bloody J's got a good lawyer. I was mentioning all of this, the games around discovery that the Fulton County District Attorney's Office is playing. Well, they were playing that game in Technicolor with the YFN defendants. And they did this after delaying that trial for a year in order to accommodate the YSL case. That trial was supposed to start a year ago, and they pushed it off because they didn't want the defendants from the YSL case and the YFN case in the courthouse at the same time, because it would have been a logistic nightmare for an overworked sheriff's office that was already having security issues. They didn't provide all of the discovery that they should have, not in time. And the judge, let's say 2 weeks or so before all these deals start to come down, looks at the defense attorney or the prosecutor and says, you will give everything by Friday. And this was on a Wednesday. You'll give, or Monday, give everything up by Monday, or I'm going to call you, you're done. Rather than do that, they dropped the case against Bloody J.
Huh.
They just, you're done. You're severed. You're out. You're in jail.
What was he being charged with?
He was part of the gang and RICO case here.
For YFN?
For YFN.
Got it.
No, you're severed out. The other attorneys look at that and go, aha, we have a discovery problem. And then the deals start coming.
Aha. So it's because of the Bloody J situation.
I think so.
They realized that they're going to have problems with Lucci's case.
Yeah. And so they just start cutting deals that start looking reasonable. Lucci didn't have a record. He had no felony conviction record. He's being sentenced as a first offender. And honestly, didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Present during a crime. It was a serious crime. Somebody died.
Yeah.
But he didn't cause that death. Not really.
Right.
So 3 years, time served, 3 years with time served starts to make sense.
All right. Because what happens is he gets offered, and this is what's interesting about plea deals. People think that plea deals only happen before trial. Not true. They can happen at any point. At any point before the final jury verdict comes in, the prosecution can offer you a plea deal. If they see that the case is going one way or another, they could say, hey, let's lock this in.
It's a poker game.
It's a poker game, exactly. So after the trial is already beginning, the jury selection happens, this Bloody J thing happens, and instead of the 20-year deal, Lucci gets offered a 10-year deal. And with the way the state guidelines are set up, with time served and how you get half your time off, for good behavior, Drew ends up getting the prosecution to sign paperwork saying that they won't oppose him getting out with 50% of the total time.
Right.
With time served, it turns into 3.5 months.
Right.
Which is a hell of a deal.
That is a hell of a deal.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually an appropriate deal.
Right.
Given the crime that they're discussing, I think that's an appropriate deal. The question is whether or not, if you want to look at the big justice thing, there was a gang war going on between YFN and YSL. That is what the prosecution believes. Mm-hmm. And their whole intent was get these guys off the street so that the gang war stops, so that we can lower the temperature, because murder rate in Atlanta jumped 60% during the pandemic, and they were attributing it in part to gang war stuff. Not just this one, but there's a bunch of others.
Has the murder rate dropped in Atlanta?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Substantially, and it started to drop, and I mapped it out against the YSL arrests. The week young thug got arrested with the rest of them, the line falls. That is the inflection point. That doesn't mean that might just be a coincidence.
Well, it could mean multiple things. Now, you could say, okay, we got the guys off the street who are doing the shootings, but you could also say that these arrests scared off everyone else
That's what
who
I think
was doing
happened.
shootings and said, "Oh no, okay, never mind.
Yeah, I think
This
there was
is how
a
bad it
pause.
could get. We all need to chill out."
If you could get Young Thug, you could get anybody.
You can get anybody.
Like, let's
Yeah,
step
you
back and
got
see what
this
the hell's
rich
going
guy,
on.
you got this multimillionaire guy.
Yeah.
Us who are barely scraping by, we don't have a chance. We need to put our guns away.
So that's part of what was going on. Like,
Yeah.
I think people started to look around and go like, all right, are we tight enough to actually continue to do crimes if we're going to be doing these things? Like, there's a lot going on. It wasn't just that arrest, in my opinion. And I've been watching this very, very, very carefully. Part of it is the pandemic started to really sort of, like, the pandemic effects started to fade right around that time in May. Part of it is a shift from out of the city of Atlanta and into DeKalb County. DeKalb County is right next to Atlanta. It's got very similar characteristics. Crime rate's been falling all over America for the last year or two. Like, it's one of the fastest declines in American history after one of the fastest rises in American history. Crime broadly in the United States is at a 60-year low, or very close to it.
Nice.
Today.
Good.
Not so much DeKalb County. It actually went up. It went up when everybody else in the world basically was going down. And I think a lot of activity shifted out of the city of Atlanta and into DeKalb.
Okay. So YFN Lucci, he apologized to the victim's family while accepting the plea deal. They shaved his head, and he's off to state prison, which is where he's at right now. I remember when I heard the news about the 3.5 months, I called his manager Fly. Me and him go way back. I was the first media outlet to really get behind this label. You know, Think It's a Game Records. I did Rich Homie Kwan's first interview. I was the first one to put up, all gold everything on my YouTube channel. So we have a very good relationship, right? And I called him. I said, "Is this 3.5 months real?" He goes, "No, it's real." I said, "Oh, thank God. Thank God." And I'm like, "Listen, just promise me one thing. When Lucci gets out, get him the hell out of Atlanta. Like,
I'll buy that.
just as soon as he gets out of prison, put him on a plane, send him to LA, send him to Miami, send him to New York, send him to Vegas, send him to, Houston or Dallas, anywhere outside of Atlanta, because he's going to be on probation, right, when he gets out.
Send him to Poughkeepsie.
Yeah.
Send him to Wichita.
Exactly.
Send him to someplace where people are not shooting people generally.
Exactly. And, I also wanted the first interview when he gets out. He said, he got me. We'll see what happens. But regardless of whether I get that or not, I like Lucci, and I know seeing stuff firsthand, interviewing probably over a dozen rappers who have gotten killed in their own cities, at some point after our interviews, having conversations with FBG Duck, telling him to get out of Chicago, and he would argue with me, and then he would get killed in Chicago. Whatever beef you have are usually, these shootings and killings are almost always crimes of opportunity. Nobody, if you have beef with someone, you're not getting on a plane and going to Miami and looking for them at the mall. That's not happening. It's, he's down the street. Oh, he's at Lenox Mall. He's over here, by the stadium. Let's go get him. That's how it works. You don't have these high-end hitmen that are out stalking people and hiding in the bushes with sniper rifles. It doesn't work that way.
It's random bullshit.
It's random bullshit.
I went to the place where Takeoff was murdered. And it's up in
Texas, yeah.
In Texas. I went to the site where he died a few months ago. I went to that bar. It's a bowling alley, basically. Yeah. It's middle class. It is in a safe part of the city. It is not known for violence. It's just a place. It's just a place to bowl. It wasn't like it's a back alley hood shooting dice in
No, it was a big public area.
At Barnes and Noble. You're like David Buster's.
Yeah.
Getting killed. And it was because of
a dice game.
A dice game
Gone
and the
bad.
people you were around.
Yeah.
And it's senseless.
Completely.
And it had nothing to do with where he was and everything to do with the folks that were around him and like this sort of instinct for violence that seems to be floating around in like the rap community that I think needs to be addressed. So I started to look at all of this stuff because I care about criminal justice issues as a political matter. Like I am a political journalist looking at crime.
Mm-hmm.